Hey girls, Tiffany Dawn here with my husband, James.
Hi everyone.
Today we're gonna talk about conflict because some of you have written in asking how we solve conflict in our marriage. And as always, we are not perfect. We are only 2 years in, so we're newlyweds. And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below of what helps you solve conflict. But here are 5 steps that help us in our marriage because we certainly have experienced some conflict. I think the first year of marriage can be a tough time for conflict. And so these are some things that have been lifesavers for us.
Yeah, and I think that conflict has a negative connotation in our society, but conflict is absolutely normal because I am an individual person and Tiffany is an individual person, and anytime two individually people try to do something as intimate and as awesome as living life and sharing space together 24/7, there are going to be differences of opinion, and that brings people closer together. But it's something that is often gets dealt with in some very unhealthy ways that actually push the other person farther away.
Yeah, I think that's so important to remember. Conflict can bring you closer together if it's done in the right way. And we've definitely seen that true in our marriage.
And it's also really inevitable, so learn how to do it well.
Yeah, because if you're not experiencing any conflict or any disagreements, chances are it could be because one or the other of you are not being honest with each other.
Chances are it's because someone isn't being honest, or they aren't really in touch with how they really feel.
Yeah.
Story of my life.
So our first thing that has helped us is honesty. Just being willing to be honest with ourselves and with the other person about how we're feeling. One of my friends I was talking with recently, and her husband did something that really hurt her deeply. And she called me and was like just kind of sharing what had happened and how hurt she was. And I was like, well, what did he say when you told him how it hurt you? And she was like, oh, should I tell him? And I'm like, yes, you should tell him. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if it's the wife who's hurt or the girlfriend who's hurt, the guy is not gonna know unless you use words to tell us, or you're like,
hints don't
real
work
pouty
for
all
guys.
the time.
And even if you are pouty all the time, like, he'll have no idea why. Like, you can be like, shouldn't you know what's going on with me? Like, I'm clearly not okay. They have no clue. They don't get hints.
Very confused.
So.
And the thing is, a lot of times you have to pay attention even to little things. A lot of times people think, oh, well, it's only a little thing. Maybe I shouldn't make this a big deal.
Hope it goes away.
What my dad always told me about relationships, which is straight out of the book of Song of Solomon, is that it's the little foxes that spoil the vines. And what that means is it's not this big thing that comes in that destroys your vineyard. It's this little fox that sneaks in, that bites a few vines here and bites a few vines there, and then eventually over time, things start to come crashing down. On a daily and weekly basis, there's things where you have disagreements and differences of opinion, and you have to address those. You can't just throw them under the rug because they're gonna pile up there, and pretty soon you're gonna have a trash heap in the middle of your living room, which is gross. You shouldn't do that.
So I think as you start to address those little things and be honest with each other, our second tip is be aware of the place and time that you choose to talk about your conflict. Like one of the big things for us is we don't want to address it in the middle of a family gathering or when other people are around.
Or in front of other people.
It's
a one-on-one thing.
Don't do it.
We actually saw it. We went over to some newlyweds' house. And they were clearly continuing to have a disagreement with one another
and
in
put
front
the other
of us.
down. Like making jabs at the other, and we were like, this is so uncomfortable.
Oh no, guys, this is not good.
Don't do that.
You don't want to air out your dirty laundry in front of people. That doesn't mean you should pretend like everything's okay. It's just do the person you're with the courtesy as another grown-up to talk about it one-on-one. Because odds are, if you have a one-on-one conversation, you can both have the opportunity to really be honest and know what the other person's thinking. If you're doing it in front of other people, a person's instinctive reflex is, I gotta make myself look good, I gotta justify myself. And it's gonna push you farther apart if you do that.
It's gonna lose trust in the other person.
Going along with choosing the right time, a lot of times conflicts have to be processed verbally. People like me,
tip number 3,
i.e. men, we run out of words at about 4 p.m. each day. I've read that women have a lot more words to use up each day than men do.
And emotionally, like apparently women have more, I think it's like 7 times the amount of, I don't know if it's synapses in your brain, whatever it is that processes emotion in your brain, I read that women have 7 times more of them than guys. So like if I have something that's bothering me, I immediately know what's bothering me, why it's bothering me, and what I want to do about it.
It's crazy.
Whereas for James, won't even know there's something bothering him for days. You've gotten a lot faster though, like a lot faster.
It does, it takes a while to process, and I need to have the energy to do it. So now Tiffany will say, you know, I have been really stressed about our budget. for example. Can we talk about that? And I'll say, yeah, I would have the energy for that. Or I would say, no, we're
not right now.
We're not right now. And you need to respect that, because if you're insisting on having a discussion right then, that night,
and the other person doesn't have the energy,
it will not be fruitful.
Yeah.
It just really won't. Nothing will get resolved. Again, you'll just push each other away instead of using the conflict to draw closer to one another.
Yeah, and then I think the fourth tip we have is to keep it constructive, so that it is pushing you closer together. So part of this is by using I statements, and this has really been huge for me to learn. So instead of saying like, you made me feel this way, instead I would say, when you did this, this is how I took it, and this is how it made me feel. And so I'm taking ownership of my own feelings instead of putting the blame on him. And that makes it so the other person isn't feeling blamed or on the defensive either. So that's super helpful, using I statements.
Yeah, absolutely. Something we've been discussing a lot recently is our second anniversary. And in my mind, we have a really fun life together. So our second anniversary, I don't know that we would do anything in particular. But for Tiffany, this is our second marriage anniversary, and
I want flowers and a dinner, and I want to go somewhere.
Oh, you want flowers? I'm glad we're filming this video.
I told you that.
I must have missed that. So we've had to discuss so much. You know, what are we gonna do, and why are we gonna do it? Because my inclination is to do one thing, Tiffany's inclination is to do another thing. And if Tiffany says, you don't love me, you know, that's pretty offensive. But if Tiffany says, when you say, I don't want to spend the money to go to a fancy restaurant, what I feel, even though I know you love me, what I feel is unloved. Yeah. And I can't really criticize her for
happened like a week ago.
For feeling a certain way. You can't criticize a person for feeling a certain way. You can say, wow, you know, I can understand why you might feel that way. I don't feel that way. But if you feel that way, you know, there's not a lot of disagreement. But if she said, you know, you don't love me, you know, I would have been very hurt by that and would have argued back, and we would not have had a constructive conversation.
Yeah. And really the purpose of these conversations, I think, is to understand where the other person's coming from. So both of you taking the time to really listen, ask questions, hear what they're saying, instead of spending your time like being distracted by thinking about what you're gonna say next. Instead, like focus on what they're saying and really trying to understand it. And that in itself, just understanding like, oh, the reason he feels this way is because he wants to save our money so we can keep doing these really cool things we do together all year long. Like, that's really special. And so that helps me feel like, okay, he's not saying he doesn't want to like go do something big and fancy because he doesn't love me. It's just like he wants to do other special things together. And so the more we try to understand each other, the more it brings us closer together. Instead of making it your goal to always be right, which is my inclination, I really have to focus. We're both oldest children, so we like to say there's a lot of people who are right in our house all the time. We both like to think we're right, although you're much better at saying that you're not. I really struggle with that, so.
I still feel like I'm right most of the time.
Making it not about that, and instead making it about understanding the other person is huge. That's gonna draw you closer together. That draws us closer together. And then being willing to apologize and be like, ask for forgiveness and humble yourself. And that's the hard part of marriage, is, at least for me, being willing to like be humble enough to admit when you're wrong. Whenever I say, you were right, he's like, can I hear that again, please? I don't hear that enough. Can I hear that again, please? So, but it takes humility, and it's hard, because sometimes I'm like, but I still feel like I'm right.
And then I think the fifth tip that we have is be willing to ask for help. You can't solve everything just by yourself.
Yeah.
We have been so thankful and blessed to have different older couples and different wise friends in our lives that we can go to sort of with the other person's permission and understanding and be like, you know, we have talked about this issue so many times, and it feels like we say the same things over and over again. You know, can we talk to someone else to try to
find some conclusions and to help us?
So to get another perspective, because eventually I feel like I know how I feel, and she knows how she feels, but we haven't been able to really resolve the issue.
And sometimes you have to talk about it a bunch of times to even get to a resolution. But for us, sometimes you have to get that outside help too. And so we'll have like friends of the same gender that will like my best friend who's a girl, I'll talk with her. I wouldn't want to like talk about something I'm struggling with James to a guy friend, because that could cause like an unhealthy, weird emotional attachment. But like, so we'll have friends that like just a few trusted close friends that we'll sometimes go to with the other person's knowledge. And then we also, what we usually do is we have a bunch of married couples who will go and talk to together about it, and also when needed, counseling. So we were working through one issue for like the first year and a half of our marriage, talking over and over, and it was so hurtful to both of us, and like we just couldn't find a resolution for it. And so I ended up starting to go to a counselor. And that was life-changing for me and for our marriage. It made a huge difference.
That's helped a lot.
So I hope that these tips can help you girls. And as always, comment your thoughts below. We can't wait to hear from you. And we'll see you again on Friday. Love you guys. Bye.